It's the Simmons Scoop. In this video, I got Director of Recruiting, Chad Simmons. He's a traveling man. We don't always get to sit down with Chad, but when we do, we love it. And today, we got a lot to cover. So before we get going, you guys do me a favor, hit subscribe to the best recruiting channel on all of YouTube, the On3 Recruits channel. All right, let's bring in Director of Recruiting here at On3, Chad Simmons. And Chad, you thought we were going to start with 2026, but we still got one major prospect in the 25 class to talk about, and that's Javari Flowers, Miami Northwestern, top 20 DB in the class. He was a 2026 recruit. He reclassified up to 2025. He's the lone remaining player in the top 150 with a decision coming this spring. So, Chad, lay it out for us. Who are the finalists here for Javari Flowers?
Yeah, he's about to have a wild month of March, as you know, Josh. I mean, I think it starts March 3rd, North Carolina. The first day kids can get back on campus. The dead period ends that day. So March 3rd it starts for Flowers going up to North Carolina. I think he has OVs to North Carolina, Auburn, Syracuse, Miami, Florida, and Georgia. So 6 schools all have OVs locked in for next month, the month of March. And then the last day of the month, March 31st, is the commitment date. So he plans to wrap all of that up. I think Miami has the last OV March 24th as of right now. And then he commits just 1 week later on the 31st at a local place down there in South Florida in Miami. So he'll take the 6 OVs, sit down with his family representation, figure out, which school is best for him. And I think you have to start with the in-state programs, like Miami, the school that's in his backyard, the school he's visited the most. That program has made him a priority. He's a personal guy that Mario Cristobal is very involved in. And then obviously you have Florida, an in-state school. There's been some buzz since he reclassified that Florida's making a strong push there, but does the changeover with Will Harris going from Florida DB's coach down to Miami impact that? Only time will tell with the official visits. But then out-of-state schools too. He's been to Syracuse. Fran Brown, has that swag. He loves to recruit that state. He signed 3 guys from Miami Northwestern in February or December in 2025 already. So there's connections there to Flowers also. And then he visited Georgia about a month ago. Loved his time in Athens. And you have Auburn, who feels they're in this race as well, getting him on campus for an OV. And then you have North Carolina, Bill Belichick, Super Bowl champion. The resume speaks for itself. So obviously you see why the Tar Heels are in this too. But you have to start with the school in his backyard with Miami, and then in-state as well, Florida, and then go from there to see if anyone can knock them off in this race.
Yeah, going to be really interesting as we head into the month of March. Like you said, you got to like where Miami stands as of February, but March is going to bring on a whole different recruitment. So Javari Flowers will be tracking that one. All right, let's move on to the number 1 offensive tackle in the country. Jackson Cantwell has locked in 5 official visits. That's the big news. Chad, take us kind of behind the scenes of some of these visits. First of all, who are the teams getting visits from Jackson Cantwell?
Yeah, I guess the OVs are Miami, Missouri, Georgia, Michigan, and Oregon. That's 5 of his top 6 schools. Ohio State's the other school. He'll be in Columbus this spring, next month as well. I think there's some big questions there about, Justice Fry moved on to the NFL. Chip Kelly, the OC, left Ohio State. Tyler Bowen's in. So he wants to sit down for a couple of days with Coach Bowen, the new offensive philosophy behind Brian Hartline and those guys, to kind of see if that's still a fit that he wants to proceed with. But 5 schools have the OVs. Obviously, Missouri, the in-state school, has connections there. Family went to school there. He's grown up around that program, knows a lot about Coach Drink's program there. But I think you have to start as far as the schools, maybe that are trending heading into this next phase of his recruitment, with Georgia, Oregon, and I think Michigan. He goes back to Michigan for a second time in Ann Arbor in March. He was there in December for the first time. And I think that really opened his eyes, being in Ann Arbor around Sharon Moore, Grant Newsom, the O-line coach, and kind of seeing what they're about on the field, off the field, developmental all of the above really impressed him. And Michigan's really kind of inserted themselves into this race as a strong contender. But you start, I think, with Georgia, a school that's been around from the beginning, and Oregon, a school he's tripped to numerous times as well. Dan Lanning, Kirby Smart, close friends, enemies on the recruiting trail, going after a lot of the same guys nationally. He loves Georgia's track record from a developmental standpoint, obviously winning championships in recent years, NFL production, a chance to play in the SEC. All is a plus for Georgia. Obviously, with Oregon, the brand, Nike, he's a top shot putter as well. And he's the Nike facilities there in track and field, the football facilities, strength and conditioning, the relationships. To me, you have to kind of start with those schools, Georgia, Oregon, and I think now Michigan as the ones to watch and see if anybody can kind of make that move in the next 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, interesting to see kind of that tier 1 form in Jackson Cantwell's recruitment. So he's going to take those official visits, and then do you think we're ready for a decision?
Yeah, I think he's all about business. I mean, Cantwell doesn't sugarcoat things. He's pretty straightforward about kind of what he likes, what he's looking for, who stands out and why. And I think he's made it pretty clear he wants to be done as soon as he can be. And he thinks after these OVs, he'll be ready.
All right, you guys let us know in the comment section, where do you think Jackson Cantwell is headed? Let us know. All right, let's talk about edge Carter Meadows. He is a top priority for many teams, and it's evident why. He was a big mover in the latest On3 rankings updates. 6'6.5", 225 pounds, now the number 4 ranked edge in America, a top 50 prospect overall. So who is making Meadows a priority right now, Chad?
Yeah, I think Josh is still relatively for him early in the process. He's a basketball kid. He loves basketball, playing for a state championship next week. I actually talked to him on Sundays. He was riding the L train to a semifinals game and play basketball on Sunday evening, and they won. So they're playing for a state championship. And, he's only been a few places, but obviously the ones he's been to the most are Penn State and Michigan and Maryland. I think obviously Maryland, he's a DMV kid at Gonzaga in DC. They would love to keep him at home. They're doing a great job with guys like Zion Ely, who's committed to him, and Zaire Mathis signed with them on signing day in February for 2025. So lots are doing a great job with those local kids, keeping them at home right now. And there's some momentum in this class with guys like that. But for me, when talking Meadows and kind of based on what the intel I've received, I think Michigan and Penn State may sit higher right now than Maryland. He's been to both Ann Arbor and Happy Valley, wants to get back for spring practices to both schools, likes the coaching staffs, likes the academics at Michigan, really loved the play of Penn State this season in the playoffs, kind of what they do with their defensive ends and making plays there. Then I think a school to watch he wants to get to this spring for the first time is South Carolina. Sterling Lucas has done a great job recruiting that area. Obviously, the headliner there is Dylan Stewart, who had a phenomenal season as a true freshman in Columbia for the Gamecocks. So they have had some success up there in the DMV area. So right now, I think you start with Michigan, Penn State. Maryland's in this as well, and keep an eye on South Carolina. But look, it's still early. He's added offers just today as we record this, Josh, from Auburn and LSU. Other schools are going to try to get involved and get in the mix. So I think it's still a ways to go. A lot of visits to be taken for Meadows and kind of see where it ends up.
All right. Yeah, this is a recruitment that's not going away. We're only going to be continuing to talk Meadows on this channel, so lock in. All right. Let's talk about running back Xavier Crowell. His recruitment's heating up. He's an electric running back from Jackson, Alabama, and he also reclassified up from 2027 into the 2026 class. He's a top 10 back in America. We got Bama, Auburn, FSU. How do you see this recruitment shaping up early on?
Well, I mean, like most times, Josh, we've both been around for a long time. And when you're a top kid in Alabama, it's hard to get out of Alabama, whether it's Alabama or Auburn. I think you have to start, right there. He's been to both, campuses multiple times, and both schools are recruiting him extremely hard. They want him to be a part of this class and their programs in the future. And I think if I had to give a team an edge right now based on what I've gathered is Alabama. Coach Gillespie, Robert Gillespie, Coach G, as the recruits call him, has done a phenomenal job there. He's a people's person, easy to talk to, easy to relate to. He played SEC football at the University of Florida. He's from Mississippi. He knows the landscape. He knows how to recruit. He knows how to build those relationships. And I like where Alabama, sits right now. The one school that he said he wants to get to for sure this spring to watch a practice is Alabama. He's mentioned schools like Georgia, Texas, Auburn, Florida State. They're all going to get OVs. And I think obviously a wild card there is Texas. He was very high on Texas, which Tashard Choice was there in Austin. He moved on to the NFL, Detroit Lions, and now they have Chad Scott in there at running backs coach, and they got on the phone very quickly. And Texas obviously intrigues Crowell, but I think right now you have to start in state, and I give the one spot right now to Alabama.
Yeah, he'll be a tough pull out of the state of Alabama. Let's go down to Florida, talk defensive lineman James Johnson, because he was a big mover in the recent On3 rankings update. Moved over 100 spots from number 118 down to 14. I'm sorry, so inside the top 15. Locking in official visits now. Chad, what's the latest with James Johnson as his recruitment blows up?
Yeah, a lot's happened for James. I saw him for the first time back in September. I was down on the west coast of Florida and Tampa, Bradenton, Sarasota, Venice, all that Fort Myers area. I'm going back there later on this week. I'll see James again in a few days. And like you said, a lot's happened. He's exploded to be in that 5-star territory for us in the On 300, an elite, athletic defensive lineman. He's taken some visits, and he's locked in, I think, visits between spring and summer, unofficial and official. I think 7 different schools will get him on campus in the next 3 or 4 months, from the in-state schools like Florida and Miami to out-of-state schools like Colorado, Georgia, Syracuse, Penn State. So he's obviously kind of looking abroad and kind of making sure he checks all of his boxes to get out from the relationship standpoint. He wants to see some spring practices, how coaches coach, and really still evaluating schools. But there's been talk about obviously him being a Florida kid with the Gators and Hurricanes, obviously very much in play. But the schools I hear the most about right now are 2 schools not in the state of Florida, and that's Georgia and Syracuse. He straight up told me on Monday morning, Georgia was his top school. He was there a few weeks ago before the dare period kicked in. First time in Athens. His words to me was, it really opened my eyes up at Georgia. Their player development, D-line coach Trey Scott, Kirby Smart, how they win, their culture, all appeals to him. And right now, they're probably the hot school others are chasing. But don't sleep on Syracuse. We talked about them earlier. Fran Brown knows how to recruit. Before he got that job at Syracuse, he was at Georgia. He knows how to recruit the top players in the country. He relates to guys. He had a great first season as the head coach at Syracuse. They're going to be involved. I think others will definitely impress and try to make a move. But I think Georgia, Syracuse, Miami, and Florida are definitely 4 schools to start with James Johnson.
Wow, that would be crazy if Syracuse went in and not only landed one of the best players in Florida, but one of the best players in the country. So we'll have to keep an eye on that one. Let's talk a little tight end recruiting now. Mark Bowman, modern day number 2 ranked tight end in the country. He's starting to lock in some visits. Chad, Bowman he's an outstanding prospect. Where do you see his recruitment heading right now?
Yeah, it's funny, Josh. When we talked about Javari Flowers reclassifying from 26 to 25, Xavier Crowell, 27 to 26. Mark Bowman, again, 27 to 26.
The new norm.
Reclassification, it is becoming the norm, And Bowman, obviously, like the guys ahead of them, with Crowell and Flowers, all can play in the classes they've reclassified to. They're all elite talents. So, and he's being recruited that way by some of the top programs in the country. And, he has the OVs, locked in now with Georgia, Oregon, Texas, and USC. And, his recruitment, he's advanced as a recruit. He's been around a lot, some other schools in the mix like Alabama. He's mentioned Florida, Miami, Tennessee, some schools of interest. But I think the ones you have to start with are Georgia and Oregon. He's been to Athens multiple times. He loves SEC football. Todd Hartley, the tight ends coach, one of the best in the country at recruiting development. We know how Georgia uses their tight ends as well. Oregon, the same way. That staff has made him a priority. They've tapped into modern day and had a lot of success there with a guy like Nasir Wyatt a year ago, Jordan Davison, a running back. They have his teammate Tom D. Lyman committed there right now for 2026. And then you have Cody Green as well, 2026 from modern day committed. So that they love to recruit that program. There's connections there from Eugene to Santa Ana, California. I think you start with those two schools, Georgia and Oregon, battling for that top spot. His dad grew up a huge Texas fan. He followed Texas as a kid. One of his first football jerseys he ever had was Colt McCoy, the former Texas quarterback there in Austin. So he knows all about the Texas program. Then you have USC, the program now in his backyard. Bowman made the move to Southern California from his hometown in Colorado a few years ago. He's been to USC. They have a new tight ends coach in Chad Savage. They've made him a priority. They're going to get an OV from him. They love to make some ground up and make a move. I think, again, it starts with Oregon and Georgia. Then you have Texas, then USC. We'll see if others can get involved. But Bowman's an elite talent that I think will play for that 5-star come the fall.
Yeah. And I was reading a report you had about number 3 tight end. So number 2 is Bowman. Number 3 is Caden Prothro. And I saw some of their schools overlapped. Any chance that number 2 and 3 tight end could end up at the same school?
Yeah, I think the ones obviously that cross over there, Georgia and Texas, are the main two. I think obviously Bowman could expand that list. He's mentioned Florida to me, and Florida's in play for Prothro as well to get an OV from him. But I think if I had to say right now, could they end up at the same school and who has the best chance? It would be Georgia, And look, Georgia's the home state school for Prothro. I would say Georgia, Bama, Auburn, kind of the main three. I would say right now. Pre-spring for Prothro, and then we just talked about Bowman. So, look, Texas is in play. They love to land both those guys. Georgia would definitely not turn either one of those guys away either. So there is a possibility those guys pair up and play together on the next level.
All right, something brewing on the tight end board. Let's wrap it up with talk about defensive back Jaelen Waters, because the last time we talked about him on this channel, we had him on Flip Watch. He was a former UF commitment, decommitted. All of a sudden, Will Harris leaves. He was a coach at UF. He's now coaching DBs at Miami. It looked like Miami was trending heavily for Waters. That was about 2 weeks ago. We haven't heard much since then. What's the latest?
Oh, yeah, nothing's changed, Josh. I mean, Miami's still in the spot to beat. Look, he obviously loves Will Harris. The day he took the job and it got announced at Miami, he decommits and kind of reopens things. And look, he says he wants to slow things down and take OVs. We both know and have followed Jaelen a good bit. And look, nothing would shock us about what he does in his recruitment. One-time Florida State commit, recently decommitted from Florida. Now the other in-state school, the University of Miami, as it has been, is trending there. Will Harris is there now. They have a great connection. He was committed to him at the University of Florida. He'll get back to Miami in the month of March. He talks about wanting to take some OVs and be out at a few different spring practices and things like that. To me, as of today, there's no real competition. Miami is the school. They're the school to beat. They're really the main school involved. Others are going to keep, trying to recruit him, Florida, Florida State, other programs. But right now, Miami has a commanding lead for Jaelen Waters.
All right, Chad, another loaded Simmons scoop. Thanks for dropping by the On3 Recruit channel. We will talk to you maybe next week, hopefully next week. We'll see.
Sounds good. Thanks, Josh.